Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you are set up so well. I can
Yes, we're
definitely hear
getting
you.
there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Give me just a
Okay.
second. I'm going to switch the
Mhm.
audio, make sure we're all good to go. Doing this has been so much fun. So it's been cool.
Oh my gosh. Are you producing yourself too?
I'm from Denver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Yeah.
So what time is it there?
Right now it's 1 o'clock.
Okay. So it's not
Yes.
that bad.
Let me, something isn't right here. Give me just a second. Oh, there it is. Aha, there we go. Okay. Mhm. Give me just a second. I can't get the audio to go through where I need it to. This is always so interesting to me how everything is all connected.
No doubt.
Can you hear me still?
You're quieter, but I can, yeah.
Okay, is it okay?
Let me see if I can turn you up on my end.
It had this happened yesterday.
Okay, now it's a bit better. I
Okay,
think as soon as you move that other mic.
this one's better.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But is that awkward? Because then you have to hold it. But
I'll just, can you still hear me well right here?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I will just leave that little dude's hanging out. Awesome. Well, good. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. I read a little bit. I
hmm
loved what you were wanting to talk about today, but yeah, kind of give me a snapshot.
Um, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I think, I guess if I had to start somewhere, I'll start recently.
Okay.
So, as of 2018, I think was the first time. So within the last 2 years, I finally, I guess, come to a place where I've started to, um, fully come aware and like live into all of the different parts of my life because
Okay.
I think up until that point I was very segmented in all like in even within myself and who I was, not only what I did, but yeah, so it's only been 2 years that I've been on this journey of actually trying to fully live into all the parts of myself, my different intersections, and then like through that live out of that also. So it's pretty fresh, and I'm like, oh, how did it take me this long to get here?
Integration is hard.
So hard.
It is so hard because I feel like closeted life splits us into so many fragments and we're code switching and we're hiding and we're,
hmm
I hide this with that people and show this part and then I flip for this other group and then to finally come to a place where we're sewing all of those pieces of our identity back together,
hmm
takes us a very long time.
Okay, I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me what kind of parts of self were at one point disintegrated. What kind of parts of you are there?
Well, I think going I actually I guess I could sum this up in I've asked a friend to work on creating a logo for me that represents me, and it's really unique to and she point blank was like, okay, well, who are you then? I'm like, oh damn, that's a really hard question.
You're like, I don't know.
Like, who am I in symbols?
Sure. Hmm.
Just not
Hmm.
even words, but symbols.
Right.
And so that was a really revealing part of me because if I were to ask other people who I am, then I would get things like, oh, feminist, activist, environmentalist, uh, spiritual person, queer, like, and but all of those things like that are reflected onto me because of how people see me versus what I like self-identify as has been very interesting. So I guess if I had to go back, um, I yeah, the self-identifying thing was really delayed for me because I was I spent a large part of my teen years, so very very important years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in an evangelical church. So charismatic evangelical at that. So a lot of that identity is obviously put on hold. So because you're not supposed to self-identify, your identity is in Christ. Your identity is solely in him and what he wants you to do for your life, your future, your calling, all of those things. So so that obviously would be why I'm a little bit delayed in that regard, but it was really interesting. So I spent my youth years obviously in youth group, and then being raised up as a leader in youth group, and then being called to Bible school and going through Bible school for the 4 years. And then like having a call of ministry put on my life. And yeah, and just I ended up, my first career, so to speak, was being a university chaplain. So I was a campus minister for a good number of years. So that, if you have any familiarity with that, or anyone who's done that, that's just a fun job. Like, it's just a lot of fun. You get to hang out with campus students who are your age or younger, because I was, yeah, in my early 20s at that point. So I might as well have been a student. Here am I leading a campus ministry with like hundreds of people. So it's really neat. And then you get that kind of like, you're kind of like in your early 20s when you're looking for your career path and you're collecting all your accolades, and people are starting to see, oh, you're a good leader, oh, you're this. And you kind of just go with the flow. So because I'm up here in Canada, at that point in time, I remember being asked to speak nationally across the country as one of the female voices of campus ministry, one of the only female voices of campus ministry. So then you have a lot of this put on you where you all of a sudden you're the face of campus ministry because of who you are and what that represents. So in one regard, it's like, thank you for allowing me to speak in this avenue. But if there was churches in my own hometown where I was trying to go and fundraise, and I wasn't allowed to speak from the pulpit because I was a woman. And so there's this always like walking in step and in stride with where you are and who you have to be. So I think a lot of that obviously naturally delayed me because I was so caught up in what was happening and how fun it was at the time. And yeah, so that probably like that was, I spent 7 years of my life there. So into my early 30s doing that type of work, which was very rewarding. And in hindsight was great, but obviously I couldn't stay in evangelical ministry as a queer person.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously once I kind of felt like I was coming to the end of that, and there's certain things that happened. I remember my sister told me, she was like, you should probably quit before you get fired. And it was true. And I ended up leaving in good standing. I'm sure if they listen to this podcast in hindsight, they could probably take that away from me. I'm like, ooh. But as far as I know, and that has to do with like different areas where like I'm not fully out necessarily. Because once I stepped away from doing ministry in that vein, I was like, okay, let's look to what's next. And I kind of just, and our world is so weird because a lot of that life lived out was when social media was really exploding, when Facebook was like really like at the height of its beginning. And so like up until 2012, once I left that life, that ministry, I just shut a lot of social media down. And then it was like, I just kind of disappeared for a while. And so a lot of people are probably like, where'd you go? Where'd you go? But that's kind of like the wave I've been riding. Like every time I've had a different career, I've kind of just, okay, next, and like compartmentalize my life that way. So that's probably why only recently I've actually gone back on Facebook without a reason for work to be there, and started inviting people from like all areas of my life, like high school, like church days, ministry days, my working in the environmental field, like everyone I've kind of collected as like people that know parts of me along the journey, and I'm kind of just seeing how it plays out. So I have a lot of conservatives, which up here is your Republicans. So I have a lot of Trump supporters even on my Facebook page, which largely didn't exist previously because I was using my platform for work, and I ended up just preaching to the choir. So yeah, it's a very interesting time right now where I'm just starting to like even like putting myself out there online,
Mm-hmm.
which part of me still cringes because I'm like, oh, I hate that so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that I want to chat about that are coming up so far, but I always like to think of it almost like stages to coming out.
Hmm.
Stage one might be us coming out to ourselves, and then coming out to our friends, coming out to our parents, and then reconciling that spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
theological component for some of us. But then there's also kind of this really important stage where we have to let people see us expressing our sexual orientation or gender. We have to let them see the pictures of us holding hands or kissing or
Yeah.
sitting at home. That's a very different step to coming
Yeah.
out, because it's not just this verbal statement anymore, it's an action.
Right.
And that is a big piece of integration.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that would be, I suppose, Instagram versus Facebook, where I do have a private Instagram account where I
Mm-hmm.
do highlight a little bit more personal stuff about my life that obviously it's a personal account versus work account.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true. And like to preface all of that is that I'm typically a private person, which I think confuses people because I'm so extroverted. So I always say I'm an extrovert or I'm an introvert really with extroverted tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
So it just like throws people, like even my family, like when I came out, it was kind of shocking and blindsiding because they're like, what? Where did this come from? And I was like, have I ever talked to you about my relationships previous to them being about women? Not really. And so it just became one of those things where it was just like, what? Who are you? And I'm like, is it really my fault that you don't know who I am? And I
Sure.
keep like popping out of all these closets being like, hey, I'm over here now. But yeah, so it is funny because it's that, yeah, holding space for like I actually am introverted and a
Mm-hmm.
private person.
Mm-hmm.
I just can be like super extroverted and friendly.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Of course, there could be 1,000 reasons why, but for you specifically, what is it about the vulnerability that might be scary or challenging? Why so much privacy?
um I think the first thing that came to mind when you asked is um probably like being afraid of being questioned,
Okay.
because I think I don't know where this was from. I don't think it was from my family necessarily. But well, I suppose a little bit of my family and through life, like the way I've been raised is to, it's weird. It's like question everything, but don't have your own opinions.
Mm.
It's this weird space. So if I'm like fully out about something that I'm like really private about or I'm holding closely and someone like criticizes or questions that, I think that would be um problematic. So I think I've tried to like separate from that so I can like cognitively like explain something without bringing my emotions into it. And so like I use a lot of like, well, you, or I talk in third person. I don't necessarily bring it back to me. Um, and I think maybe a lot of that process was like as I was like walking along and deconstructing my faith and how it and like what I was going to integrate and carry forward into like now being an adult and what that looks like and being a person, a queer person. So I think yeah, and I think I became selective about the people in my life that I chose to share that information with. I think I'm guessing we as queer people like do that often, especially coming out at first. We choose the ones we trust the most. And like I said, I have gotten a few people that are like, what? But largely supportive of like my decisions because they're in my life and they see what I'm doing and it makes sense to them. I think it's just the people that haven't seen me a long time and that only knew me from those sections of my life. Like I remember I had a student that or no, he went to my Bible school, and I remember he moved to the town where I was doing campus ministry. So he was really pumped that I was doing ministry. And when I switched working for campus ministry and I started working in the environmental field, I was working for Greenpeace up here in Canada. And I got this message, and this old person from my school was like, I'm just really worried about your soul. And I just want to question, like, where are you at? Because this new age agenda And it was just like, oh God, okay, I have to get into this. And so there's this part of me that's like, I'm kind of impatient for the people that haven't come along on their journey, or that come back at me with like, this is who you were, especially like this patriarchal, like especially in the church role that I knew. It was like they were holding me up in a sense to fulfill their own agenda, and then
Mm-hmm.
coming back, no, this is who you were, who are you now? And so that was really frustrating. And I've had people along the whole way that said that too, especially coming out as queer. And it was just like, but how can you used to say this, and how can you be like that now? And so there's this weird part of me becoming the face or the voice of these organizations that I'm like, that was my job. Yeah, it was like a passion of mine, and I definitely believed in what I was doing at the time, or I wouldn't have done it. But like, I can change, I can evolve. And it's just, I've been really hit by some people who haven't come along on that journey, and they just constantly, so I feel like the questions just bring me right back. And then I'm like, oh my God, I have to explain this again. And it's very laborsome and hurtful, I think, that at that point that I'm just like, I just don't want to do this anymore.
And
So
I think I agree. And the way that I hear this is almost as though the questioning is a very subtle way, if maybe not even so subtle, but a form of rejection, of betrayal. You know,
mm-hmm.
to have a loved one or a family member or a close friend start questioning, it really kind of creates a dynamic of unsafety.
Yeah. Yeah. The unsafety is definitely something I feel that I wouldn't know how to express that. And I guess that's where like I've learned really well to put up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, those, they kind of like, I kind of throw them up as walls, but
Mm-hmm.
because it's the fact that I feel unsafe. And that's really hard to explain to someone, especially someone that's like, I'm just trying to love you by telling you the truth, or like by questioning your motives because you need to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, ugh,
Yes.
ugh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Even as you're talking about that right now, what are you experiencing emotionally? What's happening for you?
I think a lot of frustration around, especially people that like, I guess like the, what's the word? Like, I don't feel like they've taken the time to see or acknowledge where I've come. And largely, probably they just don't know. Like, they don't know that it's been like 15 years since I was in youth group with them, or 15, or like 15 years since like I was doing ministry or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I'm like, to come back in after all that time and then just be like, what? Okay, it's, I get it, people's lives go on, and this is the frustration of social media, because people pop in and they don't see everything. They don't see your feed or all of your posts. They just see one thing, and they're just like, what is happening? But yeah, it largely brings up frustration because I feel like people that are in my life right now might not recognize how far I've come, or like my journey. I remember talking to a cousin recently, and I love her. She's the first like extended family person that I've come out to. And I remember at the end of the conversation, I guess the last time I really talked to all of them, because they're very Christian, was when I was doing ministry. And she, at the end of the conversation, and I was like, well, say hi to the cousins, like if you talk to them. And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, they'll probably want to know if like how our conversation went. And I was like, tell them how I'm doing. Like, I don't mind if you share. And she's like, yeah, they'll just probably want to know if I like spoke truth to you. And I was like, oh, I was like, if you tell them anything, like tell them that I know. Like tell them that like I spent 4 years like learning the Bible, studying the scriptures. Since then I've spent 15 years deconstructing that and spending more time studying. I'm like, tell them I know what they need me to know and to talk to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this automatic like, yeah, it's just the frustration that like they would assume that I'm still at this place where I haven't done the like done the deconstruction, done the studying, done the learning. And the fact where if I would to look back at them as well, I would look at their lives and say, but you haven't done nearly as much learning or studying or deconstructing as I have. But you're the one to speak this to me. And I think that's just a point of frustration where I'm like, don't speak to me your judgments out of ignorance.
Mhm.
And that's like a really big thing.
It sounds like not only rejection and betrayal, but also demeaning, like belittling your intelligence and not trusting you to make the best decision for your own life. Somehow that they have
Mm-hmm.
this superior moral compass that you're lacking.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's not, I would imagine you would put up some walls to not feel that.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just the amount of, just because like, and because I've switched careers so drastically from, I went to from Christian ministry, and straight up, like my undergrad had nothing to do with environmentalism, but I started working in the environmental field because I had campus organizing experience, which is a really rad skill to have. So I got into being an organizer and organizing around environmentalists. And I was like, holy crap, this is like basically exactly what I did on campus, but like for like the earth instead of Jesus. Like it was just like literally the same structure. And I was like, I can do this. This is great. This is so much fun. And so like, but then when people, so I kind of like moved away from ministry and into this field, that's where it was like, okay, I'm in the environmental field. So there's part of me that was like, oh, in order to be taken seriously, I have to like kind of be closeted about my faith journey, or like where I'm at spiritually now.
Hmm.
And so it was really interesting because there's, I mean, there's judgment everywhere. There's going to be judgment in campus ministry and in evangelical campus ministry because, you know, for everyone that finds out that I'm queer, there's going to be that judgment. And the environmental field, if they find out that I'm not like super into science the exact way that they are, it's like, oh, so that to be like not taken seriously. Yeah, so for a long time I did that for about 4, 5, 6 years, I think. And it was only until the very end that I started like being like, yeah, I do believe like there is some order to this life, and like the way I would talk about things, this is the drive of why I want to protect the earth, you know, and like start bringing like biblical language into like how God created the earth and saw that it was good, even if it was just a story that I was sharing with people, or how we work with our indigenous brothers and sisters and how they honor the earth and like their creator. And so like to bring in, but it just sucks that it took me so long to like come around, like when I was doing campus ministry and coming out like right near the end of that and being like, okay, I need to be true to myself and come out. And then I quit that ministry, and then same thing, I moved into the environmental field, and then I'm like, okay, I need to be like true to myself and come out as more of a spiritual being. And then right now I'm in like transitioning out of that too. So it's like this really like weird thing where I keep like walking in and out of like these doors that I find myself like closeted by, or like, I don't know, a better analogy was like I find myself like back in the cocoon every time
Hmm.
and then coming out again,
Hmm.
in different ways. And I like this journey because I feel like I am every time fully coming into myself and then back out into the world. But it's pretty exhausting. And then that's where you get like people in your life that question you and your motives. And it's just like, I just wish, I don't know, maybe I'll write a book or something and just be like, here, read this. I don't
Hmm.
want to talk to you about this anymore. But
So
mm-hmm,
many different, yeah, so many different sides, you know, and I think that this could almost, I hear you when you say exhausting.
mm-hmm.
Who are you on the other side of this? What is your ultimate goal? What do you want life to feel like?
Um, Oh, I just realized this, yeah, within the last year, is that I would, and this is why I go off social media.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll just like go delete my stuff for like years. I'll be like a year, 2 years. I think my longest stint was 2 years that I was off, because I just want to take time out of the spotlight in a way. And then that's where I think I do a lot of the inner work. And then when I come back, I kind of reemerge as like a new version of myself. And but I just realized, I think that I just don't want to be in the spotlight as much anymore. And so it's super interesting because all of my friends, like, and I've made some major moves, like every time I've done a career, I've been in a different location. So that's probably also influence where I'm at. But every time I go somewhere new and I have this plan to be anonymous, or I want to just be a little bit more behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't happen. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it's my personality or what lens, like what opportunities come to me, but I just end up like, and a lot to do with activism. I guess I just can't not get involved on different issues. And so, yeah, so like I've always stepped or been pushed back into the spotlight. And then I'm like, oh, damn it, here I am again. I'm like, I don't feel right. And so what I've come to recently is learning about like the imposter syndrome and like how that plays itself. Cause I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I'm not ready to be here. Like, it's not that I don't want to necessarily be there or be doing what I'm doing, but I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I don't feel worthy. I didn't actually go to school for this. Like, what's happening? And I feel so like, oh, it's the weirdest feeling. But yeah, learning about imposter syndrome was a big deal. And especially like now where I'm going, I'm trying to like, one thing that's meant a lot to me was like pursuing like my higher education. That's something I've kind of put on hold for a long time. So even now, what I stepped away from work and during like COVID time and everything, it just happens that I have the time now to finish my studies. So finishing my master's, looking at my major research right now, and then like possibly pursuing a PhD, which for me again is huge. But and that's part of like in the back of my brain, if this answers anything you asked me, is like the part of the imposter syndrome within myself to push through and to keep going and to like achieve my goals, because my goal was to get my doctorate and to eventually become a professor, which may or not be a thing in the future, who knows. But I think the one thing that bugs me about my past and where I've been is that I don't know if you've heard of this before, with like within the evangelical culture or whatnot. It's like no matter, I think, what I do in the real world, it's just this frustrating thing that I have this thought that the majority of my family, no matter what I do that's good, even if they're my own like goals, and it's just because I'm queer, it's not good. Like it's just not good. And I'm like, it comes back to the point where it's like everything I'm working towards, everything has been like a personal goal of mine, like lifelong goal. It's like you can chalk that up to being like, you're just on the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, and then to have like be questioned about like where I'm at against like evangelical theology. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm so beyond that. Like, I don't even know if you know that I'm ex-evangelical, and where my theology would lie now. But then just to be like, have all of your stuff, again, comes back to like not being respected or recognized. And it's like, oh, that is absolute shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and just like so wishing that you were in the room with me, because it just feels like there's so much emotion underneath this for you.
Yeah.
I find myself kind of wondering, where do you belong?
That's a good question, because my partner right now, like the thing that she's really, she has such a good sense of home and family, and I don't. And I guess that does make me emotional because I've adapted. I've become so good at adapting and creating a home in wherever I am, and having family at a distance, but also creating chosen family. So like there's all these things that I'm like, okay, well, what do normal people do when they have family or have a home? And that's another place, I think, if I'm honest, that I feel the imposter syndrome, because when I'm around normal people that have family and have a sense of belonging and home. But then we're also like, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. So then there's parts of me that I want to celebrate, being like, well, I'm not attached. I don't have roots. I'm up for anything. I want to go after whatever. And so there's always that, like, I've made do and I've done well with what I have. But yeah, I guess that underlining, like, where do I belong and what would essentially ground me
Hmm.
isn't there. And I don't know if it should be. I don't know how it could be.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm. I love the questions that you're asking right here. If I could maybe give some context here or kind of help make this digestible and feel workable, you know, the first thing that I notice, and many of us who have lived in the closet for so many years, is that the one thing that creates a lot of wounding for us is our own competence. It's
Hmm.
such a backwards paradox, contradiction. Like, it's so fascinating and painful that our competence to shapeshift and to be the chameleon
Oh yeah.
so that we can fabricate a sense of
Yeah.
belonging actually starts to become the one thing that confuses us and makes us feel so uprooted. And then we began kind of um, hunting and searching for that one place where we could just let our natural skin show. And after a while, we kind of don't even know what that natural color is. And we're
Hmm.
afraid because if we show it, then what if in the place where we might potentially be safe, we get kicked out one more time?
Hmm. Yeah. I always said that. I was like, I'm a really good chameleon. Like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I always thought that was because it was the Myers-Briggs test that I did way back in the day for work. And so in a work context, I was like, oh, this will serve me well. Because I literally was like in the middle. And I remember the person that was doing the test with us was like, I've never seen someone that's literally so close to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, and I always use that as like a good thing, especially in work life. And I think that's where I felt so separated and like I'm in within my work life, because the work I do is so personal that I can't really say, oh, it's just my work. Like the work, like when I was doing campus ministry, like I love student life. I love people coming to the knowledge of like God and unconditional love and however they view them and all that. Like I love that. When I look at my work in the environmental field, I'm like, I love like the idea of like preserving and protecting something that is like literally grounds us. Like, and so like I can't, and I think for a long time I've just been, especially in the transition of those roles, I've just been like, oh, okay, well that was just work. But so at the same time, and I think that's why I get so offended when people question me on it, because I'm like, this is my life's work. And I'm just I happen to be doing like all of it. Like, and so I just wish, yeah, I don't know. Like, I wish there was some way that I could just stop pretending that it doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
just like fully integrate it within myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if that would make it easier, because it's not just work. It's very personal to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Boldness is something that we really favor right now in our cultures. We love to be bold and post those things on social media, but boldness is
Mm-hmm.
very different than vulnerability. And I think vulnerability is it's a much more challenging process.
Yeah.
And I think to stand, some of my favorite words here, naked and unashamed, that kind of vulnerability will help create a home, but my God, it is petrifying.
Yep. Yeah.
The reason I want to keep using that word home, because I wonder if feeling home and internalizing the sense of home might then give you the ability to boldly assert and be vulnerable with all of these beautiful parts of you. Does that make sense? I'm thinking of a tree, like with these
Yeah.
deep roots. When the wind comes, it's like, man, I got this because I'm rooted in myself.
Mm-hmm. I think idealistically it makes sense. In I think there's a gap in that way of like how do you move past the imposter syndrome? of
Hmm.
that. And is it even like me feeling that because I feel that, or is it me feeling that because constructs have been placed on me? Whereas like you can't be that, you can't do that, you can't think that way. This in like and that in every single thing I've done, I haven't fully been able to show up as all of me.
Hmm.
So I have like closeted parts of myself or hid parts of myself. And so I don't even know, like the imposter syndrome, like it's like I want to be fully rooted and confident, but I just need to like just like I hate the cast off wording, but like just to throw it away and just be like, okay, enough. Like if I feel insecure as hell within myself, then that's fine. But
Hmm.
like stop putting these things on me that are like, you can't feel this way, or you can't step out and confidently be a queer person of faith.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and it's like, and yeah, so much of that because of the activist within me, and I just, it makes me so frustrated,
For sure.
these constraints. And so that's where I'm trying to like, yeah, how do I get past all of that to get home and then confidently like be there without just like fucking everyone and locking myself inside. Sorry if you have to
Yes.
edit that.
No, we're leaving it
Mhm.
in. Okay, so one of the things when we come out of the closet, oftentimes I think we leave our compass in the closet. And here's why. Because as we're growing up closeted, we never get to think about what we want and what we need. And that, in many ways, is not only a compass that helps guide us forward in our own preferences, but it becomes a very strong, even moral compass. I'm thinking of the little kiddo. Here's an example who says, "Mom, I'm hungry." And the mom says, "I just gave you hot dogs. You shouldn't be hungry. Go away." And then the little kid walks away thinking, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be hungry.
Mhm.
Maybe what's wrong with me? Why is this happening? No one else is hungry. Why am I?" And then we lose this compass that says, I know what I want and I know what I need and I can trust myself. And when
Right.
we grow up in religious environments or just closeted life, we're saying, I shouldn't want to want that. That part of me is dirty. Why do I have that part? Why do I crave this? Why don't they crave that? And we really began to question our own guiding forces. And so
Mhm.
when we come out of the closet, we say, I'm just going to leave that back there because I don't know how it functions. My needs and my wants, I've been taught that they're wrong. So, as a queer person who's out, oftentimes I think we say, I'm just going to be the best chameleon I can.
Right. That makes sense.
And so, I think one of the ways that we overcome imposter syndrome is to very gently and continuously ask, what do I need and what do I want? Because that
Mhm.
gives us the ability to reconnect with the very fundamental desires of our heart. I want to feel cherished. I want to feel powerful. I want to feel creative. I want to feel desired. I want to feel safe. And when we're following those beautiful needs and wants, we're going to collect the people who mirror for us. Oh my gosh, Isaac, you're so cool. Or I'm so glad you're here. And then to have people, this is that vulnerable part, that say, I love it how you showed up this afternoon as this queer, professional, environmentalist woman of faith. I love it when you're here. And that naked and unashamed vulnerability gives you the ability to be seen by other people.
Mhm.
And it was your desires that helped lead you to that place.
Yeah. And I no, that makes sense because when you ask like what I want to do, like what my goal is, I think it was I remember having someone who knew me from working in the environmental field, and I had put together a conference that was highlighting this in 2018 when this all started. I was putting together a conference called Spirit Pride up here in Canada, and it was highlighting the gifts of the queer community. So it's like people of faith or not, but just people that are in the professional world. Like, so we had the mayor of Victoria, where I live, is she came and she spoke as a queer woman. We had different people, actually Jennifer Knapp came up for that one, which was really amazing. So different powerful people, women, trans folks, everyone. It was amazing. And I remember I just put it out on Facebook for the first time, and I hadn't really done that before. And I remember this one woman showed up and she just stood in front of me and she just said, "Thank you." Because she's older than me and I really look up to her. She's like super big activist in the town. And she was just like, "Thank you," because I was coming out about my spirituality. She's like, "Thank you for doing this, because there's parts of me that I feel like I can finally show." And I'm like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we all segment ourselves, put ourselves, and I'm like, we don't want people to put us in boxes just so they can put us on the shelf that makes sense to them, but why do we do this to ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And when she said that, and of course I broke down, I was like bawling, and someone happened to catch a photo of me bawling. But I love the photo because it reminds me of that moment that someone said, "Thank you." And that was like the first time in myself, I was like, what if, wow, yes, what if showing all sides of myself at all times actually allowed other people to fully lean in and live out of their intersections too? Like, duh, this should be the thing. This should be my, and I suppose that's becoming my goal, but it's just been such a hell of a journey. I tell you.
One of the things that comes to mind right here, you're asking a really good question, and I know maybe you didn't even realize you're asking a question, but
Nope.
We do this because of a very sneaky, powerful force in our relationships called enmeshment. Enmeshment is this thing that says, I am responsible to keep you comfortable so that you don't leave me. And it's very, very subtle. This idea of can I be joyful enough? Can I be thoughtful enough? Can I hide my personality well enough? Can I filter out the parts of me that feel unwelcome good enough to keep you comfortable in my presence?
Right.
And that's how we originally learn how to be the chameleon, by watching and scanning and collecting data about what keeps people happy, what keeps them smiling, what keeps them comfortable. And when we have too much data, we lose ourselves.
Oh, that makes so much sense. We would just be overwritten.
Absolutely. And so we use what I call this illusion of control. The illusion is that I can control your comfort in my presence by hiding who I am. And when we get a good dose of enmeshment, if our parents are incredibly judgmental, critical, if they're addicts, if they have kind of a lot of volatility, whether it might be mental health or, again, an addiction, a strong religious conviction, that will really put us under this perceived microscope that says, I have to perform by hiding who I am. And the tricky thing about this is we assume that we're valuable because we do a good job at that. And so to drop the performing means we lose value. We don't realize that we're more valuable when we're shining and we're beaming.
Yeah.
What you thinking here?
Yeah, it's hard to I guess it's hard to admit that I like the spotlight, which is so, because I'm like that person that, like, half an hour ago I said I don't want to be in the spotlight. Of course, you're probably like, duh, you're like a 7 on the Enneagram. What are you, fooling yourself? Because yes, I actually and I think, but that's also where I found my self-worth. Like the last role I had working for up here, I was constantly on the news talking about environmental issues and stuff like that. And it was like this, it was the most stressful thing in my life that I hate talking to media. Every time I got so nervous. But then, of course, I love seeing myself on TV, especially when they, like, you know, edit the right sound bites and I'm not swearing on camera. But all of that, it's like that becomes what, so as much as like I hate it when people assume they know me, it's like I'm constantly put myself in these positions where they do know me. They know me really well, that part of me. And yet I still hate it when they think they know me.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it's there's a little bit of I don't know what the word is there. Conceit, selfishness. I don't know what that brings up in me, that I'm like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like getting known, I suppose, for the right reasons, for
Yes.
like all parts of me, as much as I'm willing to show everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like bam, like really like, yeah, to be the face of one thing. I just want my face
Mm-hmm.
on my things. I don't want to
Right.
do anything for anyone else anymore. I guess that's where I'm at. Yeah, that, I mean, obviously some burnout speaking there, just to do with the work that I've done. But yeah, just really getting to the point where I'm like, okay, what's my face about?
Yeah.
It's my face. It
Mm-hmm.
should be
Mm-hmm.
about me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. There's another, I love that question. What do I want and what do I need? I guess it's two. But then also this really important question of how am I already enough? It
Mm-hmm.
sounds so simple, but how am I enough for my friends, for my loved ones? What do they really cherish about me? Because if
Yeah.
if what we're doing is saying, okay, you're more comfortable with me when I'm smart. You're more comfortable in my presence when I'm funny. We love coming up with those answers because of the enmeshment. But
Mm-hmm.
what about I'm enough when I'm vulnerable? I'm enough when I'm crying. I'm enough when I love being in the spotlight. I'm enough there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And having that really land on like me.
Yeah.
Like the places where I'm, yeah, I'm enough because I'm enough, not I'm enough because that's what you need me to be.
Hmm.
It's a big thing. Yeah.
This is where it gets really, really, really disorienting because I call it the ta-das. When we say, ta-da, look at how I hid myself. Ta-da, look at how I kept you comfortable. Ta-da, look at how I put the slippers out for you. Ta-da, look at how I bought you your
Mm-hmm.
favorite thing. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. And we feel so comfortable there. But when we stop, and it's those moments when we want to ta-da because we're afraid that they're going to leave and we don't, that is a moment of serious disorientation. Who am I? Where does my value come from? Why are they staying? Who do they see? Are they happy with who they see? Where does my power come from? What if I lose my value? We have this whole identity crisis in one little split second.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember having that thought, like when I left my last job, my last role, um, which a lot of people would have killed for that job. It was like an unheard of position. And I remember being with my partner and thinking, like, I consider myself to be someone that has a lot of confidence. Like I used to say, I'm not conceited. I just have enough self-esteem for both of us. But I used
I like
to, and
that.
I remember thinking, well, my partners still think I'm cool if I step away from this role. And I was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's like, that was as real as it got for me.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, of course, like I actually had that conversation with her and she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, I was only with you because you were cool. Sarcasm. And I was like, oh, thank God. No, but it
Uh-huh.
was such a cool moment for me to be able to be like, actually, I've experienced enough vulnerability with this person that I can even consider that,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously that like plays a part in my life of
Mm-hmm.
how I've chosen to show up to places and with people and for what causes. there had to have been some part of mine. I mean, I can't be completely altruistic. Be real. So, but yeah, that was a really neat place that I would like to explore that further. I think that's probably the best place for me right now to feel safe. And I feel so grateful in my relationship with my partner to be able to express vulnerability, not just feel it, but to be able to express it
Absolutely. And
with
still be
her.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I like to, I have two more little thoughts.
Okay.
One of them is I like to encourage people to practice vulnerability like they're handing over the stackable Russian dolls. That is to say, to unstack all of them and get to that little doll in the middle, just the little one, and to hand it over and say, I'm just handing over this little nugget of vulnerability, and then I'm going to watch you. Are you trustworthy? Or do you treat it with respect, or do you throw it back in my face? And if you handle
Mm-hmm.
that and if you cherish that little nugget that I gave you, I'm going to give you the next biggest one. And I'm going to continue not only letting you earn my trust, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to continue practice trusting you with who I am. And over time, we kind of share more and more and more. This is the second part. I think that vulnerability at first is like climbing up this massive cliff only so that you jump off. And you're kind of like, it's the cliff of vulnerability, right? Like you get the courage to climb up this thing and then the courage
Yeah.
to jump off, and then you jump and it's like this free fall and your gut is spinning. But then you hit this little pillow down below. And the more that we run this course, we wear it down. So this mountain becomes a molehill. And sooner or later, the process of vulnerability is just this little slide down into safety without a scary free fall. And we don't need to build up this courage because we've practiced it enough that we know it's a safe thing for us.
Right. Yeah, that's doable.
I wonder if this integration piece for you and really feeling present and whole everywhere you go, if it'll start with this practice of vulnerability to create the home and watching people say, I've seen every freaking Russian doll you could hand over, and I still think you're the most beautiful person in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Having people do that is going to give you the confidence to go out and be whoever you need to be. We need each other for this mirroring process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't get that. We say, my Hispanic culture, no, mijo, don't, boys don't do that. No, mijo, don't talk about that. Don't say that. Hi, what are you doing that for? And we begin
Yeah.
saying, oh, hide that, shut that down. Ta-da, just kidding, ta-da.
Yeah. Just kidding.
And then we walk around hiding who we are.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing I'd like to show you, and we can meet again if you want, but I'd really like to go through a little chart with you. Changed my life. It'll unpack some of the enmeshment,
Okay.
some of the ta-das. I think you might really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm such a practical is the way it is. Like I just want to like, and a linear thinker. So I'm like this to this to this to this and then do that. So yeah, I'm like, okay, what next? What next?
Yeah,
Which would be, and like I said, it's been like this journey where I feel like it's pretty new still of like being into this for 2 years, being like fully coming into all parts of myself. But I know like this next time right now is critical for this journey. And I'm stoked to do the work. I think just, yeah, I need to really marinate on like the idea of home. I think that's probably what is the biggest thing I'm taking away from this. Because I don't know how it feels still. I'm like,
Sure.
okay, I need to go sit with this and like what this means for my life within myself, within like where I place myself. So
yeah, I think someone who is searching could easily feel like an imposter because they're climbing up trees, they're making clothes out of leaves, they're eating berries, they're out on an adventure searching for something and they're not home, but it could easily feel like what the heck am I doing in this tree? And why the hell am I wearing these leaves? And who am I?
Yeah.
But really, it sounds like you're searching.
Hmm. Yeah. And I feel like also collecting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like yeah, like I guess your analogy of like, I feel like I'm in a state of like gathering,
Mm-hmm.
like gathering, I guess the good and like figuring out, okay, that didn't serve me. This part did serve me, or I'm going to take the pieces from that. I just want to gather and go from here.
Yeah, almost like you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of nesting, collecting all the sticks and the soft things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we land on this analogy? I'm like picturing myself as a bird. Like, I'll make the nest, and then I'm gonna fly away.
Uh-huh,
That's what's gonna
uh-huh.
happen because I'm a
Yes.
7.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
But maybe that nest is in you and your partner.
Yeah,
Maybe it's in the
yeah,
vulnerability.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you want
And
to set up another time? Go ahead. I didn't.
oh no, I was just like thinking about how stoked I am too, because we're also thinking of like actually moving in together. So like technically creating a home and what that could
Yeah.
look like,
That's
and like
awesome.
yeah. So I think even coming to that could be really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And maybe as a 7, maybe you're partially at home in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of me is, but I also need the freedom to be like, okay, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is a 7. It's like,
For sure.
but
Mhm.
anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to talk again. I don't know how
Cool.
necessarily it works, but
Yeah, let's do it. We'll just make it a part 2. We'll do a series on the little podcast here.
nice.
Yeah. Does that feel comfortable for you? I want to make sure
Yeah.
it feels
No,
safe.
it does.
Okay.
It does.
Let me know if we need to visit anything. How about next Friday at the same time? Does that work for you?
24th? Yes.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Yes.
Cool.
That's amazing. Was it you or David that sent me the original
That was David.
invitation?
That was
David.
David.
Oh,
Mhm.
that was
Yeah.
so nice. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Would you send it to me, or would he send it to me, or?
I'll ask him to hook
Okay.
us up again. Yeah. I
Okay.
have it on my
No,
calendar. So if anything, we'll get you taken care of.
no, that's amazing. No, thanks for doing this too. I remember
For
my
sure.
partner was like, "What are you doing?" And
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Oh," and I showed her a little bit of your website, which was really cool. And I was like, "No, she has this thing about men that not anti-men, but she has this thing about men that have kind eyes." And she
Oh.
was like, she saw your face and she's like, "Oh no, he has kind eyes." She's like, "I'm really excited
Oh.
for you." And I was like, "Oh my
That's
God,
awesome.
it's so cute. It's so
Oh,
cute." So,
nice.
but yeah, no, I'm so grateful for this.
Cool.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
woohoo. I'm glad
We'll
we get to
get
do
you.
it again too.
Yeah. Good. We'll get you
Okay.
all taken care of.
Thank you. That's
Yeah, for
amazing.
sure. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, have a good weekend. And I'll
I
see you next
will.
Friday.
Definitely. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Isaac.
Cool. Uh-huh. Bye.